What if fantasy worlds look completely different than you imagine them? Not darker, not brighter, but something entirely beyond human imagination. Every fantasy story begins not with words, but with visuals. The art decides what feels magical, terrifying, or breathtakingly beautiful. But here is the twist most people never realize. Not all fantasy art styles feel the same emotionally. Some styles make you feel hope, while others create deep unease. And some styles feel so real, they almost break reality itself. Now imagine stepping into 10 completely different fantasy worlds today, each world shaped by a unique artistic vision and imagination. Each artist bending reality in ways you never thought possible. But here is where things get interesting. These artists do not just draw pictures. They control how you feel about entire worlds. They influence how heroes look and how villains feel terrifying. Think about your favorite fantasy movie or game right now. Chances are, the visuals shaped your emotions more than the story. Because humans connect faster through visuals than words, and fantasy art takes that power to another level. It builds worlds that never existed, yet feel strangely familiar. But not all fantasy art styles are created equally. Some focus on hyperrealism, making magic feel almost believable. Others embrace chaos, turning imagination into unpredictable visual storms. And then there are styles that feel ancient and mythological, like they were painted long before modern civilization existed. Now here comes the question that changes everything. Which art style truly defines the fantasy genre today? Is it realism, surrealism, or something completely different? And who are the artists shaping these visual worlds? Because behind every masterpiece, there is a mind creating magic. Some change the industry forever. Others quietly influence millions without people even realizing it. And a few created styles so unique they cannot be copied. Today, we are not just exploring art. We are entering 10 different dimensions of imagination, each with its own rules, emotions, and visual language. But be ready for something unexpected along the way. Because the deeper we go, the stranger things become. Some styles might inspire you deeply. Others might make you feel slightly uncomfortable inside. And that is the true power of fantasy art. It makes you feel things you cannot always explain. Now picture standing in front of an empty canvas. You have the power to create an entire universe. What would your world look like? Would it be bright, peaceful, or dark and chaotic? That choice defines everything about your story. And that is exactly what these artists mastered. They did not just create images. They created emotional experiences through visual storytelling. But here is the hidden truth most beginners ignore. Style is not just about technique. It is about how you make people feel instantly. And the best fantasy artists understand this deeply. They guide your emotions without you even noticing. Now we begin our journey into the first dimension, a style that feels almost too real to be fantasy, a style that blurs the line between reality and imagination. This is where magic feels dangerously close to being real. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. But remember, this is only the beginning, because the styles ahead become even more mind-bending, each one pushing imagination to its absolute limit, and each artist redefining what fantasy can truly look like. By the end of this journey, your perspective will change. You will never look at fantasy art the same again. You might even start seeing hidden details everywhere, things you completely missed before watching this. So stay with me because this gets intense. The first style we explore is hyper-realistic fantasy, and it will challenge everything you believe about imagination. because sometimes the most unreal things look the most real. And that contradiction is where true magic begins. Now, let us step into the first world together. And trust me, this is only the beginning. The first style we explore is hyper-realistic fantasy illustration. This style makes impossible worlds feel visually believable and grounded. Artists in this space blur imagination with photographic precision. One legendary name in this field is Greg Rutkowski. His work feels like scenes captured from an alternate reality. Every texture, shadow, and detail looks almost painfully real. But then something strange appears within the realism. A glowing sword, a mythical beast, or impossible architecture. That contrast creates a powerful emotional reaction instantly. You feel like magic could actually exist in your world. Now we shift into a completely different visual dimension. Dark fantasy illustration brings fear, mystery, and psychological tension. This style often explores the unknown and the uncomfortable. One master of this style is Zdzislaw Beksinski. His art does not just show darkness, it makes you feel trapped inside it. Twisted figures, endless landscapes, and haunting silence dominate his work. It feels like a dream you cannot wake up from, and yet you cannot stop looking at it. Now imagine moving from darkness into pure imagination. Stylized fantasy art focuses less on realism and more on expression. Colors become exaggerated, shapes become bold, and worlds feel playful. One influential figure here is Loish. Her art feels soft, emotional, and deeply human. It proves fantasy does not always need to be intense. Sometimes it can feel warm and relatable. Now we step into something even more epic. High fantasy illustration defines worlds filled with heroes and legends. Think massive castles, dragons, and ancient magical battles. One iconic artist in this realm is John Howe. His work helped shape the visual identity of entire fantasy universes. Every piece feels like a story frozen in time. You can almost hear the battle echoes within the artwork. Now we transition into surreal fantasy. This style breaks logic completely and embraces impossible ideas. Floating cities, melting landscapes, and dreamlike structures appear here. A powerful influence in surrealism is Salvador Dali. His concepts pushed imagination beyond traditional boundaries. Surreal fantasy makes you question what reality even means, and that confusion becomes part of the experience. Now we explore concept art, used heavily in films and games. This style focuses on designing worlds before they even exist. It is where imagination meets planning and structure. One key figure in this field is Feng Zhu. His designs feel functional, yet completely fantastical. Every detail serves a purpose within the world. Now we shift into anime-inspired fantasy illustration. This style combines emotion, storytelling, and stylized character design. It often feels energetic, dramatic, and visually striking. One major influence is Hayao Miyazaki. His worlds feel magical yet deeply grounded in emotion. You connect with characters instantly through visual storytelling. Now we move into minimal fantasy illustration. This style uses simplicity to create powerful imagination. Fewer details, but stronger emotional focus and symbolism. One artist known for this approach is Killian Ng. His work proves less can sometimes feel more immersive. Now imagine stepping into painterly fantasy art. This style feels like classical paintings brought to life. Brush strokes, lighting, and texture create emotional depth. One master of this is Craig Mullins. His work feels timeless and cinematic at the same time. Now we explore Gothic fantasy illustration. This style combines elegance with darkness and mystery. Sharp contrasts and dramatic lighting dominate the visuals. One influential artist here is Brahm. His characters feel both powerful and haunting. And finally, we reach experimental fantasy art. This style breaks all rules and creates something entirely new. Artists here are not following trends, they are inventing them from scratch. Every piece feels unpredictable and fresh. And that unpredictability keeps the genre evolving. But here comes the unexpected realization. None of these styles exist in isolation anymore. Here is the truth that most people never fully understand. These art styles are no longer separate worlds anymore. They are blending together in ways never seen before. Today's artists are not choosing just one style. They are combining multiple styles into something completely unique. And that changes everything about fantasy art. Because now, originality matters more than tradition. But here comes the deeper question. If everything is blending, what truly defines a great artist? Is it skill, imagination, or emotional impact? The answer is not as simple as you think, because the best artists do something different. They make you feel something instantly, without explanation, and that feeling becomes unforgettable over time. Think about the last artwork that stayed in your mind. It was not just visually impressive. It made you feel something deeper inside. Maybe wonder, maybe fear, or maybe pure inspiration. And that is where true mastery begins, not in technique, but in emotional connection. Now here comes the twist most beginners never expect. The best fantasy art is not about fantasy at all. It is about reality, hidden beneath imagination. Every dragon represents fear, power, or inner struggle. Every magical world reflects human emotions in disguise, and every hero's journey mirrors real-life challenges we face. So fantasy art is not an escape. It is a reflection of who we truly are. That is why it feels so powerful and personal. Now imagine creating art with that understanding in mind. You are no longer just drawing scenes. You are telling stories that connect with people deeply. And that is what separates average artists from unforgettable ones. They do not just show visuals. They communicate emotions without using a single word. But here is another powerful realization. Technology is now changing everything about fantasy art. AI tools, digital platforms, and new software are evolving rapidly. Artists can now create faster than ever before, but speed does not guarantee emotional impact. In fact, it can sometimes reduce originality. Because when tools become easier, creativity must become stronger. And that creates a new challenge for modern artists. How do you stand out in a world full of content? The answer lies in your unique perspective. Not your tools, not your style, but your voice. Because tools can be copied, but vision cannot. And that is what makes an artist truly irreplaceable. Now think about your own creative potential for a moment. You do not need to master every style immediately. You need to understand what you want people to feel. Start there, and everything else will follow naturally. Because emotion is the foundation of all great art. Now we come back to the original question. What is the best fantasy art style in the world? The answer is surprisingly simple. It is the one that makes people feel something deeply. Not the most detailed, not the most popular, but meaningful. Because meaning creates connection, and connection creates impact. And impact is what makes art unforgettable forever. So instead of chasing trends, focus on your vision. Instead of copying styles, build your own identity. And instead of seeking perfection, create emotion. Because that is where true greatness lives. Now, here is your challenge moving forward. The next time you see fantasy art, look deeper. Ask yourself what emotion it is trying to communicate. Try to understand the story behind the visuals, and most importantly, reflect on how it makes you feel, because that awareness will change everything for you. It will transform how you see art forever, and maybe, just maybe, how you create it too. So if this opened your perspective even slightly, then your journey into fantasy art has already begun. And trust me, this is only the beginning.